Hello, dear friends. Welcome to Kardec Radio 24/7, nourishing our souls. And we are back right now for more Life Goes On because we know that life is a series of blessed continuum by the grace of God. And thanks to the mentor, Andrea Lewis, we are able to wear together bifocal glasses, traveling back and forth between the real life in the spiritual realm and life here in our earthly school, and seeing how the two worlds interact and seeing how the laws of action and reaction take place in our everyday lives. And for that purpose, Andrea Lewis brings to us two central characters, Evelina and Ernesto. They discarnate in similar circumstances, adapt to the real life in the other realm, learn that life goes on, and learn that they would like to be useful. So their first mission is to care for Tulio, a spirit to whom they were both connected. And we are together with them, beautiful friends, learning how to love beyond matter, how to love for eternity. And today we are going to see how Evelina and Ernesto revisit their own motivations for cherishing their ties with their loved ones as they return to Earth for the first time. So it's going to be quite the journey. To get us ready, we have Sunshine, always shining from coast to coast. Welcome, Sunshine.
Thank you, Carol. Wonderful. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. And to get us started in this multidimensional journey, would you please kindly say a prayer for us?
I certainly will, Carol.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I invite us all, if we can, to close our eyes and open our minds and hearts. It is with immense gratitude that we gather this morning. Our gratitude extends to our Creator, first cause of all things, and our guide and model, Jesus Christ. We also connect with Mother Mary, whose phalange is taking care of the most troubled spirits in this universe. We're also, with gratitude, connecting with Kardec Radio and its mentors, and our own mentors and healing doctors. We're also inviting in all the listeners in both realms. And we're opening up to new teachings that are coming from our instructor, Andre Luis, through Chico Xavier, who, due to his discipline and dedication, allows us to have these immortal lessons in our lives. And as we understand better of where we're coming from and why we're here and what we need to learn while we're here and where we're going, we're praying that we not only understand the lessons, but also utilize them in our own lives daily, the daily practice for our inner transformation, so we become more coherent as we progress. And with this and so much gratitude in our hearts, we're opening this morning's intercontinental coast to coast classroom. And so be it.
So be it. What a beautiful blessing, Sunshine. I'm going to take a moment, Sunshine, to check on Facebook to see if there are friends that are saying hello to us. One moment. Oh, I see us here right now. So far, no official hellos yet, but of course we welcome you and we hope that you enjoy this journey with Andre Lewis and ourselves, whether you listen to us on demand or whether you join us live. You are blessed. You are joy of living. You are a beautiful child of God, and it is an honor for us to learn together because according to the law of society, which is in the third part of the Spirit's book, we are designed divinely by God to learn from one another. So, dear friends, before we even begin, we would like to express our infinite gratitude for this opportunity for us to inspire one another and to be inspired by the On High with lessons for immortality. Because life goes on, right, sunshine?
Yes, it
Shall
does.
we get started?
Yes.
Okay.
Hey, we're looking at chapter 18, and it's called The Return. And
Buckle up, everybody. This is gonna be quite the trip. Hello, Shaina Coppola. What a blessing to have you here, dear friend. Thank you for the blessing of your company. It's beautiful that we can be inspired together and learn together for immortality. Welcome, Shayana.
welcome. At long last, the return. Both Ernesto and Evelina were like children at a party. The first time home in 2 years. Before joining the small group of spirits returning to their earthly homes in situations similar to theirs, Rebus gave them this recommendation.
You represent our city, says Rebus, our customs and principles. So behave according to your new understanding. If you need help, get in touch with us through our mental wire. Mmm. Mmm, literally wonderful food for thought. We learn here through the blessed words of Professor Rebus in the spiritual realm that there is thought to thought communication. So, of course, cell phones are blessed, right? Because we can communicate with each other even if we are on the other side of the world. But we know that thoughts are even more powerful, dear friends, because we can communicate with each other multidimensionally. So if we have recently been through the experience of seeing a loved one transitioning to the other realm, we now know that we can still communicate with them probably faster than the speed of light. How? Through WhatsApp messages from mind to mind. This WhatsApp technology is infallible and doesn't require internet. The internet wiring created by God is unbeatable. Let us learn to use it by sending mental wires for the good, right, sunshine?
Right. Emmanuel tells us that, our thinking, our feelings, and our actions, but particularly it comes from our thinking, our feeling, are dynamic elements, and they
Mhm.
have an inductive nature. It's just like electricity, really, right? It's
Right.
electricity that travels along a wire creates voltage, and it's then there's a few more steps, then turned into electricity. And our thinking, our feeling is exactly the same way, which then raises the question of responsibility, right, Carol?
Right.
Responsible, as you
Absolutely.
said, are we sending divine thoughts? Are we doing the good as they are asked to do on their journey to Earth? Or are we sending negativity, upset, and anger? So it's really important that we ask ourselves, where are we at in our emotional and mental responsibility with our thinking now that we know it travels far and wide, and we're always influencing others, and we are
Yes.
under the influence of others, right?
Yes, and we are indeed also connected to spiritual colonies in the spiritual realm. Because if we are here already knowing of the treasure of Spiritism, most definitely, says Emmanuel in the book Thought and Life, we were prepared prior to reincarnating. So the invitation of Mentor Rebus to Evelina and Ernesto applies to us. We are also ambassadors of our spiritual colony, and they are also counting on us to spread the good, especially mentally, because our mental wires can travel far and beyond what the physical realm can do. Right?
Right. Thank
And Gabriel Inácio has joined us.
you.
Howdy, he says. Howdy back to you, dear brother of ours. May you be blessed in every way, child of God. Welcome, welcome.
Welcome.
Hey, let's continue. Buckle up once again. We are going from the colony to the earth. Let's do it.
Rebus embraced them and wished them a happy journey. When the vehicle landed near the Via Anchieta, which is the highway between the cities of Santos and Sao Paulo, at the point where the road forks on the way to Sao Bernardo, the small group dispersed. Each member of the excursion was an eager traveler, each of them a living world of homesickness. The group's director, also responsible for the vehicle in which they had arrived, scheduled their return for the next day. Delighted, our friends breathed in the soft breeze that greeted them. They were surprised, happy. They could hardly believe they were actually on the outskirts of Sao Paulo. They were overwhelmed with joy as they contemplated the clear, deep blue sky of a late afternoon in May. Around them, gusts of cool wind brought back memories of days gone by. They walked with joy, enrapturing their hearts. Yes, this was the city they knew, the place they loved. They eagerly inhaled the aroma of the flowers and smiled at people in the cars that were going down to Santos that Saturday afternoon. At a certain spot on the road, Evelina, whose heart and mind were fixed on her husband's image, stood in front of Ernesto as if he were a giant mirror, and asked with innocent tenderness what he as a man thought of the way she looked. She wanted to display the same simplicity and good taste that her husband used to want when he came home. She realized that the situation was different now, that he would not detect her presence physically, even though she could see him. Nevertheless, she had heard that people who missed their loved ones were able to see them with the eyes of the soul, as if they had a television screen in their mind. If Caio's emotions and feelings were focused on her, he would surely register her caresses, even if for him it would be nothing more than simple memories. Ernesto laughed at her remarks and praised her perspicacity. He looked at her hairdo and face, told her to smooth out the folds in her dress, and approved of her shoes like a father encouraging his daughter on prom night. He then admonished her jokingly that it did not become her to be so coquettish. The young woman justified herself, showing certainty of her husband's preferences. Both were conversing lightly when they arrived in the Ipiranga neighborhood, where Evelina anticipated finding Caio in the same house that had been the theater of their happiness. Suddenly her joy gave way to apprehension. As they approached her former home, she felt her chest tightening in a mix of joy and unexpected alarm. What if Caio hadn't been as loving and faithful as she had imagined? Doubt crept into her mind like a poisoned dagger piercing her innards.
Ernesto, do you have any intuition about what is awaiting us? Can you believe that right now I feel terrified? My knees are shaking.
It's the excitement.
What else?
Fantini looked at her very seriously and said, Evelina, do you remember what we tried to teach Mancini?
Of course, but what does that have to do with our problem?
Let's think. For months now, we, you particularly, have been talking to Tullio about matters of the soul, self denial, understanding, serenity, patience, instructions given over and over, conclusions and repetitions.
Yes.
Let us pause right there.
Mhm. Right.
So, Fantini is pointing out to Evelina that hey, you are teaching something. You are teaching some moral qualities over and over and over again, which reminds us of the beautiful instructions we always receive from the spirits and through the books is effort and repetition, right? That's how we learn. That's part of our discipline to always repeat the lessons. And this is what Tullio and no, what Fantini and Evelina experienced. And
Mhm.
what Fantini is reminding her of is while she was passing on the lessons over and over again, her Wi Fi was hopefully tuned to the lessons she was giving and actually registering them in herself so that she would be able to practice them as well. And that is something we need to guard ourselves against, right? We need to learn that the teachings, the Bible, the gospel, the good news are not just dead letters, but they're actually here for us to understand, but then most and foremost, to practice them. So, those of us who pass on information from on high need to remember that the information is most and foremost for us, right? It's like when we pass on water or a liquid or perfume, and we give, if I have some perfume in my hands and I give it to Carol right now, I smell too. Carol will have the same smell, and hopefully it's a beautiful, rosy smell. It's for me too. It's not just for Carol, right?
Right. And you know, Sunshine, it's very interesting to see Evelina's emotional response. She's like a teenager celebrating quote unquote Valentine's Day. We just had Valentine's Day in the United States of America, and it's a day when we celebrate love and friendship. And she is behaving like a young adult who is about to meet her partner, perhaps for the first time. So we have two lessons from her emotional response. One is that our loved ones don't become perfect just because they discarnate. Discarnation is not an automatic path to perfection. They, like us, will still carry what they have learned and lessons that they are still in need of addressing. And Evelina shows her very human side because she gets very emotional. And we will see throughout this chapter that this emotionality of hers, if I could put it this way, this humanness, this human side of hers, attests to the fact that she is emotionally attached to her husband, thinking that he is still her property, hers to take. And this is a beautiful lesson for her because as she undergoes the experiences that we will describe, she will have to revisit the sense of possession. So, therapeutic question number one for us all, including Sunshine and myself, as we celebrate love and friendship, how are we celebrating? Are we looking at our partners or loved ones as ours to take and cherish? Or are we looking at them from the perspective of equality? They are spirits in progress who belong to God. In other words, are we living and cherishing and constructing God-centered relationships? Or are we living, cherishing, and constructing ego-centered relationships? But Carol, how do we know? Simple question for us. We know if we revisit our expectations. If our expectations tell us that we are in the relationship, any relationship, to have our needs met, if our primary goal is to make sure that the other person meets our needs, then the thermometer, the spiritual thermometer, is telling us that this is a more ego centered relationship. But if we are there thinking of how we can support that spirit in evolution just like us, then the spiritual thermometer is showing us that we are detaching with love and learning to see one another as eternal spirits. So, where are we in this continuum as our life goes on? Are we living God centered relationships or ego centered relationships? Let us continue and see how Evelina transforms her perspectives.
Right.
Right?
Thank you, Carol. This is
Thank,
very, very good. So we
thank
can look.
you. Yes. And speaking of yes, that's exactly what Evelina says next.
Yes.
She says yes.
Yes. So hold on. You are Evelina, right?
Yes. Then
No.
Evelina,
Mm,
then Ernesto, I believe, says, don't
yeah.
you think
Mhm.
that?
With so many explanations about love and marriage, service and spirituality, Instructor Rebus wasn't doing the same for our benefit? Don't you believe that in conversing with us so thoroughly at times, our devoted friend is acting as a teacher looking ahead?
Yes, yes.
Let's be prepared for changes.
Interesting reminder for all of us.
Mm-hmm. Evelina, and also really to remember when we give advice or when we share the good news that the message is for us, right? For it's really for us as well.
Right.
It's nice when people say, and when they give advice and say, and I'm speaking to myself as well. It
Exactly.
makes it so clear.
Right.
It humbles us too, isn't
It,
it?
yes, for
Wow.
sure. Thank you for the important reminder, Sunshine.
Yes. Thank
This is
you.
a remedy for our souls. We
Exactly.
are undergoing growth and healing together.
Yes. Evelina changed the subject. She said she was anxious, a bit tired. If possible, she'd like to rest for a moment. She didn't want to approach her husband with any signs of indisposition. And Esther proposed a few minutes of rest in the gardens at the museum. They set out and stopped at the foot of a fountain. Its water seemed to possess the power to calm their thoughts. As if he had been contaminated with his companion's fears, Fantini suddenly felt sullen. Shall we pause?
Yes, we shall, please.
Yeah, so he all of a sudden felt contaminated, sullen, and later it's also mentioned melancholy came up in him. So he was the
Mm-hmm.
influence of his friends' mental and emotional currents. It brings us back to the first pause we put in our program this today, and that was the mental wire, and it's also the emotional wire. It is this inductive nature of our feelings and our thinking that influences others. And we said it's so important for us to be emotionally and mentally responsible about what we're putting out, since we're always under the influence of other people's feelings and thinking.
Mm-hmm.
It is, I believe, in chapter. It's the one, forgot the name of it by now, but it's in Thought and Life, where Emmanuel teaches us that this influence is something that's happening every second of the day. that we open up the internet and we're being influenced by political information. We're influenced by fashion. We're influenced by financial situations and decisions of how to look and who we are. And it is something that we need to be observant of
Mm-hmm.
because we are wired to imitate. And so we easily become other people's or express other people's feelings and thoughts. This influence can be very inductive. And it happened to our friend here, Fantine.
Yes.
Sudden.
And
Yeah.
if you don't mind, Sunshine,
Yeah.
it's beautiful to realize how spirit science is now matching with material science, or the opposite. Material science is finally catching up with spirit science because now neuroscience tells us that through scientific studies that we have what is called mirror neurons, that we are literally neurologically wired to do exactly as you said, mirror one another. So, what does the spirit of science add to that? Spirit of science not only confirms that, but it adds another dimension to it. In addition to serving as a point of reference to each other on the physical realm, through spiritual science, we learn that we serve as an inspiration, influence to one another in the other dimension, in the spiritual realm as well. So, as spiritists, we take double responsibility because we are not only vibratorily influencing one another on this realm, but we are also influencing one another on the other realm. So, therapeutic question number 2: what kind of vibratory messages are we sending? How are these vibratory messages formed? As you said beautifully, Sunshine, through the nature of our thoughts and feelings. So when we go out to work, for example, we can already visualize light there. We can already speak to the guardian angels of everyone and hope that we are at service. When we go to the supermarket, we can visualize the guardian angels of everyone showering the material food with light and embracing everyone who is there. When we go to a restaurant, we can actually pray for those who are eating alongside with us. So we can constantly be sending vibratory messages of love and be of service because there isn't one place on this earth where we are not counted upon by God and Christ Jesus, our Master. So, in the name of our Master's love, which literally shines like sunshine, right, sunshine? We ask ourselves, what kind of vibratory messages are we sending? Because we are going to leave our perfume behind. So the
Mm.
question is, what kind of perfume would we like to leave behind?
Yes.
Right?
Yes, it's beautiful, Carol. The other thing is also that we are under the influence of other people's minds, and that
Right.
from the spirit side, it's again in two realms. And how can we guard ourselves? And it's actually the remedy that you just presented about doing the good and connecting with the higher realms in our thinking through prayer, that we protect ourselves. So if we, for example, all of a sudden feel extremely fatigued or melancholic,
Mhm.
who is influencing us? Is this really I who is feeling that? Or am I being influenced by a spirit or a human being, right? This is
Right.
something that we need to also be vigilant of, that it's a two-way
Exactly.
street. Right?
Exactly. And Dennis Damour, who just joined us, is
Yeah,
summarizing this proposal beautifully for us, Sunshine. Thank you, Dennis. He's saying,
so
I I have to remember and consciously pray. Absolutely. I have to remember and consciously pray. And Gabriel Inácio is summarizing this even further to us. Thank you, friends, for collaborating. It's beautiful when we interact like this. Gabriel Inácio is saying, it's not easy to understand we're not each other's owners. I'm going through a lot with my stepson because he doesn't want to obey my rules. Exactly. So when we do the exercise, Gabriel Inácio, to put God at the center of our relationship, we ask first and foremost for God to assist that soul. And we talk to our children from spirit to spirit. So we may say, I know that you may be frustrated right now. It's not easy to reincarnate. It's not easy to undergo the experience of self education in the school of life yet again. It's not easy to participate of a particular configuration in our family dynamics. But I would like you to know that we are together because God wishes us so, and God believes that we can do our best. Let's believe in our best as well, and let's pray together so we overcome our own emotional difficulties. So this is a way to look at each other, even if we are in a position of temporary authority as a father and a child, to look at each other as eternal spirits and to talk to each other as such. And when our children, no matter how old they are asleep, we can more easily talk to their spirits. So this is another way, doing the God at home, talking to them as their bodies are resting, and talking to them personally, eye to eye, saying we are here to adjust to God's plan. I'm gonna do my best to see what God's plan is for us, but I'm willing to love you more than I do right now because I know that that's what God is willing us to do. And I'm sorry that reincarnation is not easy all the time, but we are here to learn together through effort and repetition. I'm here to support you. So, this is a God centered parenting strategy that Professor Eurípides Bassanufo, the first spiritist educator in the world to open the first spiritist school in the world, named Allan Kardec in Sacramento, Minas Gerais, tells us to do. He tells us to look at our children past their growing body, look at them as eternal spirits, and talk to them and say, how would you feel if I treated you like this? What do you think God would like us to learn from this situation? Why do you think God put us together? What is another way I can love you more? Because I'm sure I'm here to love you. And when I discipline you, it is because I believe in your spiritual potential. Right, sunshine?
Thank you, Carol. Yes, that's important. And sometimes we can only speak to them when they're asleep
Yes,
from
exactly.
afar because they are not open to listening to us.
And the God at home is a beautiful way to shed light onto all of our souls, right,
Yeah,
sunshine? And
beautiful.
speaking
Right.
to their guardian angels as well. Their guardian angels are our best allies because they want that soul to progress as much as we do. So
Mhm.
let us team up with the good as we do the good. Thank you, Gabriel Inácio, for your honesty, for opening up, and we will definitely pray with all of our hearts for harmony in your beautiful hearts. Thank you, Gabriel Inácio,
Thank
for
you.
sharing. Okay. Shall we continue?
Mhm.
Yes.
Mrs. Serpa discreetly kept silent. Oh no, we're here. So, as if he had been contaminated with his companion's fears, Fantini suddenly felt sullen. Just as he was about to see his wife and daughter again, his enthusiasm for the event was dampening. He became lost in thought. Evelina noticed this and started talking about hope and joy, reinforcing the merit of positive thinking. He registered the trustful words spoken by the young woman who had become his sister and friend, but was incapable of warding off the melancholy that had suddenly come over him. Mrs. Serper discreetly kept silent, but finally said she was ready for the last leg of the trip. Gentleman that he was, Fantini promised to assist her during her first contact with home. She could check out the domestic environment first. If everything confirmed her optimistic expectations, she should return with the news to where he would be waiting for her at the nearby spot. He would then leave her with her husband until the next day, while he would head for Villa Mariana, where he hoped to see his own family again. Evelina agreed. She didn't like to be alone in this, nor could she do without his support. It was 6 p.m. Evelina no longer saw the sky above Sao Paulo, or the rows of houses, or the pedestrians. With her heart pounding, she approached her home. She crossed the front patio and touched the door, which was no obstacle to her entry. Something was telling her that Serpa was home, and she proceeded trembling and terrified. She looked around. The living room was the same, except for a few changes in the furniture. On one side was her husband's narrow study with its curtains open. She entered with the reverence of someone who walks step by step through a sanctuary. The books were in order. Suddenly, beside a small vase of flowers, she saw the photo of a woman. She inspected the walls, searching for the picture she remembered of herself, but there was no sign of it. She felt stabbed by negative feelings. Her mind went blank. Obviously, she had been replaced. She felt the anger ready to explode in a violent fit of tears, but she gained the strength to repeat to herself the words of the instructor: behave according to your new understanding. Behave according to your new understanding. Is this a good point to ask a therapeutic question
Yes.
after this
Please,
episode?
sunshine. Yes.
Well, it invites itself for us to go inside and ask ourselves, are we incorporating our new understanding into our own lives? Are we learning from our lessons, from the teachings, from our studying? Are we more cohesive every single day? Where are we at on a scale of 0 to 10? Zero,
Beautiful sunshine.
as Vanessa always says so beautifully, zero
Yes.
being, oh no, this is all just dead words. Nothing is for me. That's not interesting me, and I have nothing to do with this. And 10 being, oh yes, I am learning. I am practicing. I'm observing myself. I'm doing the nightly review, and I'm on the path of inner transformation through effort and repetition.
And it's interesting as well, sunshine, to observe Evelina's emotional response.
Yeah.
Andre Lewis beautifully tells us that she experiences anger. Where's the anger coming from? From her feeling threatened. Why is she feeling threatened? Because she feels as though her possession has been taken away from her. But we no longer need to feel this sense of um, threat with regards to our relationships if we learn to look at each other as children of God. So here's an opportunity that is offered to Evelina and to all of us to exercise looking at one another as children of God, not as my this or my that. When we look at a partner, whomever they may be, in whatever configuration, let us practice saying, "Oh, thank you for joining me in my journey, but you are first and foremost a child of God. And I bless you in whatever direction you may wish to go because you are indeed first and foremost a child of God." So, can we look at our parents as children of God, as spirits who are only temporarily sharing an experience with us? Can we look at our stepchildren or children as temporary travel companions with us? Can we look at our partners as temporary travel companions as well? If we learn to look at them from above, from a higher perspective, then we shall not feel anger, even if the configuration of our family changes, because we know that since they are children of God, they have their own destiny, and that God will determine when we shall be together again. So there's no need to feel threatened anymore because God is in command.
And there is another level, Carol,
Yes.
which ties into what you are saying to connect
Mm-hmm.
with God, which is beautiful, which is really the ultimate step. It is more on an earthly realm to get to that level of seeing everyone as a child of God. Sometimes it's challenging for some people, is to understand. In Marshall Rosenberg, who wrote the book Compassionate Communication, some of you may know about him, a very Christ conscious person during his lifetime. He said, behind every negative emotion, like anger, is an unmet need. And all
Yes.
of us have the same needs. They're the universal human need. So if Evelina feels angry, then we're asking, what need of hers wasn't met? And the answer is her need for love. But then once we become conscious of that, then we can also see, go to the level that you described and ask, how else can we fulfill this need for love if we can't get it from this particular
Mm-hmm.
that we are really maybe attached to getting it from? Because there is God ultimately, and there is always love. Jesus,
Right.
Mother Mary, the good spirits. There is an infinite amount of love. We're swimming in love. And once we become conscious of that need, then we can look also at alternatives, and it helps us then to connect to God.
Absolutely. And as Dennis Damour is telling us now, we can connect to God through our heartbeats that are inside of us. And in that way,
Oh,
we see the sacredness of life. And you're right, Dennis. Thank you
yeah.
so much.
Thank you, Denis, for sharing.
So
Denis,
insightful. Yes?
yeah, Denis lives on the East Coast in Canada, and
Oh,
a friend of mine, yes.
welcome, dear friend. It's wonderful to have you. Thank you for your very insightful comment. You are so right. Yes,
Mm.
absolutely.
Now,
Thank you,
continue.
Sunshine, also for this very practical exercise, understanding that we all have needs and we can get our needs met. Otherwise,
Mhm.
if we want to receive love, we shall give it. If not to person X, to person Y. Because after all, we're all children of God,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yes.
Thank you, Carol.
Thank you, Sunshine.
Upset, she went farther inside, and coming upon the small winter garden she herself had planted near the kitchen, she saw the unexpected love scene. Serpa and the young woman in the picture she had seen a few minutes ago. Caio was holding the young woman's right hand between his own in a gesture of tenderness that Evelina knew all too well. Between revolt and disappointment, she took a step back. Awful chills shook the fibers of her soul, as if a strange lipothermia had come over her, announcing a new death. Lipothermia is a feeling of faintness. She wanted to run and to reveal herself at the same time, to scream and flee, to bury her immense pain in Fantini's chest. But she couldn't. Unperceived by the two lovers, she had no other recourse but to collapse in a nearby chair and compose herself. Conflicting thoughts crossed her mind. Who was this unknown woman? Was she the same one who had tormented her spirit with little notes of love to Serpa decorated with carmine-colored kisses? Caio had sworn his undying love during her last days at home. How could he justify breaking the vows that she had kept as treasures in her heart? To what kind of new bonds had Caio surrendered? Had he remarried, or was he irresponsibly toying with others' feelings, belittling life? What did the future hold for her? She looked at the two of them and was astonished at their indifference to her presence. For the first time after the great liberation, she could see that the physical senses are contained within strictly set limits. Caio and his companion often looked right at her without seeing her. She, on the other hand, was forced to see and hear them like any ordinary person for as long as she stayed there. Mrs. Serpa was in agony. Despite the yearning to disappear, to flee, her emotions kept her from moving. With a wounded soul, she noticed her husband address the other woman with the same look of love that used to be hers. And there was more. She recognized the string of pearls that he had given her as an engagement gift, now adorning her rival's neck. She was angry. Nevertheless, although Evelina's mind was filled with burning thoughts, she could no longer rid herself of the subtle connections with the teachings of the spirit city that had become her home. For that reason, she felt she was being evaluated as to how well she was applying the lessons she had learned from Rebus and other friends of the greater world. She remembered Tullio, to whom she had repeatedly taught detachment from obsessive emotional fixations, and she had to admit that she herself was probably in a state of even more selfishness and embitterment. Let us all
Wow.
exhale. Yeah, wow. Right? Yeah,
Right.
obsessive emotional fixations. Shall we look at that a little more
Yes,
closely?
please, sunshine.
Yeah, it is a very strong combination of words, probably one of the strongest, because obsessive emotional fixations is something that is like a loop, a negative loop. Obsessions are always negative obsessions,
Mhm.
something that causes us pain. And it's a loop that we can't break out. There's actually something called an OCD, an obsessive compulsive disorder, which is actually a psychiatric disorder. And we're wondering where is the root cause? Where does it come from? This particular fixation that she is seeing in Tullio and experiencing a little bit herself with her husband is something that comes from
Mhm.
passions that are not from selfishness, from pride, from passions that are not educated. As we learned in the Spirit's book, and we said it again, but effort and repetition is always good, right?
As always.
Remember?
Yes.
Passions are like a horse. A horse gone wild is destructive. So if we don't rein in our passions, they become destructive. They can become repetitive. A loop we can't break out of, destroying ourselves and the others around ourselves. However, if we educate our passions and we rein them in and we learn how to deal with them in a positive way, because passions can be really important for us to do the good, to feel passionate for the good, then they are like a horse that is in reins and then doing the good. So, something that Tullio and she are still struggling with is educating their passions. And to, they are both still tempted to experience love in a more lower vibrational way. It is actually in Missionaries of the Light, where Andre Louise is teaching us that we here on earth have a tendency to drag our love carelessly into the realm of abusive, addictive, and purely sexual connections, which are part of passions that are not educated. It's an expression of uneducated passions which lead us to pain, which is actually more or less a reflection of living in a planet of atonement, where we're creating actually the pain for ourselves by not connecting to the higher realms also in our human connections, in our love reactions. And since our planet is in this beautiful transition to a planet of regeneration, we are invited today by these beautiful teachings to really watch ourselves, our passions, our attachments, and to change. As we asked ourselves earlier, are we implementing the teachings? Right, Karen?
Exactly, sunshine. And one way to change is to revisit our expectations. If we expect our loved ones to behave exactly as we want, if they are to follow our rules, our wants, our needs, we are bound to be disappointed because our loved ones are not ours. They are credit that we receive from the divine bank. And they are not ours to manage, they are God's to manage. So the reason Evelina is feeling so much pain right now is because she is erroneously seeing Caio as her possession. So we are being invited by the spirit mentors of Kardec Radio to revisit the way we see each other in terms of our expectations. Our friend, dear Vanessa Anceloni, always reminds us that when we feel pain because of an error in encoding. What is the error that Evelina is making? Oh, he's mine. How dare him not to be mine anymore? But if she had revisited her expectation, I do not expect him to be mine, but rather God's, then she wouldn't be disappointed. If she were not disappointed, she would not experience anger. This is how our Master Jesus, friends, was able to see Judas, for instance, know that Judas was going to betray him and still be at peace. So, if we would like to be in emotional balance and peace, the mentors of Kardec Radio are inviting us to revisit our expectations regarding our loved ones. Right, sunshine? And
Perfect.
how do we do it? By reining in our passions.
Passions, exactly. I was just going to say that.
Yes, thank you,
Yes.
sunshine. Let us continue
Uh,
our learning journey.
Let us. Um, she resorted to prayer, was able to humble herself in fighting against her feelings. She concluded that Kaio deserved to be as happy as she pleased. And beautiful, right? Prayer, which is really the way to go, right? So
Yes, absolutely the way to go. Yes.
little by little, she managed to compose herself and began to listen to their conversation.
Vera, boasted the smiling attorney, in me you have found peace-loving, sincere, a peace-loving, sincere man you can be proud of.
And how do you explain that objectionable woman in your office?
Now, don't be jealous. A lawyer doesn't choose the clients who come knocking. I'm a man of the people and cannot deny it.
So you mean I don't have the right to watch out for our relationship?
Who said that?
The phone call I received from that meddler left me crushed. You should have heard what she said about you.
If we paid attention to everything people say about us, life would be unbearable.
But I can't stand it anymore.
What do you mean? Stand what?
The girl Caio had called Vera burst into tears. He drew her to him as Evelina watched in surprise, and after kissing her several times on the face, he whispered in her ear, "Silly."
Silly girl. Oh, it's you. Go ahead. Sorry.
Let's just imagine it's a male voice.
Yes.
"Silly girl, it isn't a flower to be watered with tears. Come on now, I'm yours and you're mine. What else is there?"
If only we were married, if only I bore your name, I could deal with these women who torment our life.
"Nonsense! You exaggerate everything. I've told you I'll marry you, and I mean what I say."
I've been waiting for so long.
"And how long have I been waiting for you to solve your family problems? You can't expect me to put up with a crazy mother-in-law."
My mother is just unhappy. We can't abandon her.
"I've already told you, put that old woman in an asylum. She's lived her life, and now it's our turn. We're going to Guarujá today. I want to see the situation for myself." The young woman wept copiously in response. While Serpa stroked her hair in an attempt to console her, Evelina made the enormous effort to drag herself away from there. She yearned for Ernesto's presence, for his company again. It was impossible to stay any longer in the home she realized she had lost forever. Lacking self-control due to the overexcitement that dominated her, she yelled for her friend as soon as she was back on the street. When Fantini appeared, she threw herself into his arms like an inconsolable child.
Ernesto, Ernesto, I couldn't handle it.
Her companion guided her discreetly to one of the patio's benches, and sitting her down beside him, he listened as she told him the entire tale in between sobs. Fantini felt sorry for her and tried to forget his own trepidations. He couldn't guess the reason for the tenderness that drew him irresistibly to Mrs. Serpa. However, the days in which they shared these grievous experiences together had transformed Ernesto into her unconditional friend. In listening to her as he shared her pain and took her aside, forgetting about himself, moved, he tried to calm her down. "It's fair for him to be like this, Evelina. Caio is young. You two weren't an older couple like Eliza and me. I believe he has a place in his heart reserved for you, but of course he has the needs of a normal man."
But the girl with him is the same Vera who wrote him the notes, the same one. That proves he was unfaithful before our separation and continues to be unfaithful even now.
Stroking her hair in a fatherly gesture, Ernesto commented, "I have been thinking. Don't you think death has returned us to ourselves, and that God has given us selfless benefactors who have supported and instructed us so that we could face the truths that we are experiencing now? What did we do with our existence in this world, in the world? Was it a course in selfishness or a learning experience in selflessness?" His voice was flooded with inner tears. "Did you have a husband so that you could love him, or so that you could make him an object of decoration? We talk so much about devotion while still chained to our physical body. Wouldn't after death be the best time to prove our vows? Might now be the time that Serpa needs consideration and understanding more than ever before?"
Wow.
What
I
a beautiful question.
think that deserves a pause,
I
Sunshine.
think so too.
Yeah.
I was really struck by this beautiful perspective, this new perspective of his question. Is our life a selfishness a course in selfishness or a course in selflessness? Oh, that is really at the same time a very huge question for us, right?
Yes, of course. We
Yes.
gotta feel the scriptures and bring it to our hearts. Absolutely, sunshine.
Right? To reflect back, to what degree are we of service? To what degree do we put God above everything else? Do we truly love God above all else? Do we wake up in the morning and we're just thinking about our own lives and making our own to-do lists and just running, rushing to serve ourselves? Or are we waking up with a prayer, the prayer which is asking, what is God's to-do list? Do we make God's to-do list, right? Right, Carol? Do we do that every morning? Do we practice the golden rule? Do we practice justice by accepting, honoring everyone's rights? Do we practice charity? And we're talking not only the almsgiving charity, but most and foremost, the one that's most challenging for us here on planet Earth, moral charity. Are we truly benevolent towards all? Are
Mm-hmm.
we indulgent towards other people's imperfections, but vigilant with our own? Are we practicing forgiveness of the offenses that others have committed towards us? Remembering always how many times have we offended others, and sometimes we don't even know when we're doing that. How often do we pray? Prayer is a form of charity, prayer for others. We just now, in our nightly study group of memoirs
Mm-hmm.
of suicide, learned about the importance of praying also for suicides, the
Mm-hmm.
forgotten children, often
Absolutely.
forgotten children of the universe, right, Carol?
Yes, yes, right.
Right? These are very important questions. And how often do we see, are we looking in relationships just to get a sugar daddy or to get this bombshell girl to show off our own selfishness and pride versus that we're asking ourselves, how can we be of service to
Mm-hmm.
everyone we encounter in our lives rather than just taking? And that's
Right.
part of God's to-do list, right, Carol?
Right, and Sunshine, you brought up such an important point. You talked about the sense of justice of other people's rights. And in the Spirit's book, Allan Kardec and the illuminated minds working under the Christ give us a beautiful definition of justice. They say that universally to be just is to respect the other person's right to be exactly as they are. So it's a beautiful proposal for us to revisit our earthly concept of marriage. Do we see our partner in marriage, as Andre Lewis says, as Facchini says, as a trophy for us to exhibit to others, to feed our own ego, and to show off how good we are? Or do we see that person as someone who is there to learn alongside with us how to be better eternal spirits? So, in our marriages, do we put the light of eternal education on, or do we stay in the horizontal line, only seeking to show off our possessions? Beautiful opportunity for us to compare the earthly perspective on marriage and the universal and eternal perspective on marriage. And if we are ready to take the universal and eternal perspective on marriage, then our vows, as Facchini says, continue on after this carnation, because we shall respect our loved one right to be exactly as they are.
Beautiful. Thank
Right,
you.
sunshine? Thank
Yes.
you. Let us continue learning. We want more. And Melissa Deline is here with us. Thank you, dear friend,
Hello,
for
Melissa.
joining us. Many blessings.
Thank you. Not so much because of the words, but rather the tone in which they were spoken, Evelina felt compassion towards Caio. On the screen of her imagination, she began to see her husband in a different light. Caio was indeed a young man, and the Lord's designs were keeping him tied to his physical envelope. How could she expect the unwavering love that he was still so far from attaining? She had been secluded in the spirit world for 2 years without having seen him at all. How could she criticize his behavior? And why condemn the girl? Hadn't she seen her bitter tears at his thoughtlessness and insensible remarks? Couldn't she perhaps see Vera taking her place at his side, receiving his half-hearted commitment, and inheriting the afflictions that she herself had gone through? Fantini broke the silence and shook her from her thoughts. Remembering what Rebus taught us, I have concluded that our instructors sent you on this excursion so that you could learn how to forgive. And who knows, maybe that girl
Maybe what?
object
Objected Evelina.
maybe that girl is the person for whom you should ask the grace to be Tullius's new mother. We have been studying complex themes involving passion and rehabilitation, guilt and reincarnation, inducing us to think and think about it. On the other hand, Rebus showed us what Mancini needs without making any suggestions. However, we do know the young man is in our hands now during his phase of readjustment, after having lost his physical body due to being shot by Serpa. Don't you think that Caio should restore him to the earthly experience with the devotion and tenderness of a father? And what better occasion than right now to practice what Jesus taught by loving the one you regard as your enemy and making her an instrument of assistance to benefit the indebted man you love?
Wow. I
Pause.
think that deserves a pause too, Sunshine.
Oh, there's so much in there, right?
Right.
Where shall we begin? Maybe with love our enemies as ourselves,
Yes,
to learn
exactly.
to forgive and see the good in those who have trespassed against us. Jesus was very clear. He did not say eye for an eye and we're punishing those who have trespassed against us. No, Jesus came and taught us the opposite. He says, love your enemies. And what do we do in our lives? Do we still hold hatred and rancor and vengeance towards others who have trespassed against us? Or are we truly, through effort and repetition, are practicing Jesus' teaching, taking them truly to our hearts? Are we forgiving unconditionally? Are we wanting the good for those who are difficult for us in our lives? Are we rejoicing when they experience wonderful things and receiving gifts in their lives? Can we really go there? Can we really feel that? Are we helping them? Are we praying for them? Are we practicing charity towards them, benevolence, indulgence? Are we returning, in short, are we returning good for evil? And that is the proposal that Jesus gave us 2020 years ago. And where
Wow.
are we? Are we really at that? Are we really practicing charity? Remember, he also said, we also learned that there is no salvation without charity. And when we truly forgive, what's on the other end of that dark and narrow, long tunnel, it's really just gratitude. Because
Mhm.
once we really see that whoever is in our lives and creating some hardship for us, is just serving us, is our best teacher. And once we really recognize and embrace it and forgive them, we can only feel gratitude
Yes.
from the depth of our hearts. Yeah. And this is
Right.
what Fantini and Evelina are touching on right now.
Thank you, Sunshine. Yes, and there are two other lessons that we can extract from
Yeah.
there. One is we see Evelina has a change of heart. And why? Because she starts feeling compassion. This is exactly what Emmanuel in the book Thought and Life tells us. That when we practice understanding, we free ourselves from the shackles of the past. So we see the old woman in Evelina dying out and a new spirit emerging, vibrating higher as she learned to look at her former husband as a companion in her journey. The lesson number two that we can add to the Christ centered lessons you already shared, Sunshine, is the beauty of God's mercy. Because we know Caio took Tulio's life. So he is now going to be the instrument through which Tulio will have a new physical body. So we see how the laws of reincarnation are perfect and how they operate first and foremost not only through justice but through mercy. And another lesson, building upon what our dear brother Gabriel Inácio shared with us earlier, this is why our family is considered to be our first school. And this is why sometimes we have rocky relationships under our own roof because we know that those who are the closest to us in terms of living in our own home are exactly those with whom we need to fine tune ourselves with and quite often learn to love in a God centered way because we are there to finish up or redress what we were unable to do in the past, just like Kyle is going to do with Tulio by being his father. So if we have a difficult relationship at home, we are blessed because we are being given the opportunity by the mercy of God to learn to love that soul. So mentally, we can take pills, vitamins for the soul by telling ourselves, I love you, dear spirit. I'm willing to love you, and I know you are a child of God. So when we have a difficult thought or feeling about that person who God brought back to us, we can replace the difficult thought or feeling by, I know you are a child of God, and I believe in the good in you, and I'm willing to love you. So let us take vitamins for the soul, friends, as we know that our home configuration is not by chance. Right,
Yes.
Sunshine?
Beautiful, Carol. Thank
Yes,
you, reminder.
thank you. Let us continue. We are almost done with our journey.
Yes. Evelina understood the scope of such considerations and fell into her friend's arms, weeping copiously and exclaiming.
Oh, Ernesto, Ernesto.
A few more seconds, and a car could be seen leaving the garage with the couple inside. Holding back her sobs, Evelina said that she had heard the two were heading for Gour Rouge. As the young lawyer got out of the car to lock up the house, Fantini looked at his young companion and turned pale. Then, perhaps more deeply shocked than Evelina had been, he stammered, stricken with distress. Evelina, Evelina, listen to me. That girl, that girl is Vera Selina, my daughter.
Wow. What a journey! We see that nothing is by chance, right? That
Yes.
all of our ties are specifically planned by a higher power and a power that loves and cares for us. So, whomever we meet, we know that they are a gift from God. For this week, for our final reflection, let us look at all the people in our lives and think what might be the gift from God that is enwrapped in that person. It is my job to find the eternal gift in that soul. So let us do a scavenger hunt for the soul, dear friends, and look at each person as a child of God and look in them what might be the gift, the learning opportunity that God wishes for them to partake with us. Shall we, sunshine?
Yes, and there's just one little hint as we
Yes.
embark on this beautiful journey to look at our relationships from a different perspective is as soon as we feel gratitude for every single person in our life, we know we are arriving at the goal of
Yeah.
love and transmuting our, particularly the difficult relationships.
Yes. So if we are feeling difficulties, we are blessed because we are developing new muscles of the
Yeah,
soul.
yeah,
And let us repeat to ourselves that we love ourselves and that we believe in our own ability to do the good. And with that in mind, shall we do a final prayer,
yeah.
sunshine?
Please, would you be willing?
Yes, of course. Beloved God, we are so infinitely grateful for so many opportunities to nourish our souls and to learn to grow for immortality. We thank you deeply from the bottom of all of our hearts for the lessons of detachment that you have brought to us. May Ernesto and Evelina be greeted and thanked for their courage, not only to share their stories with us, but also to inspire us to develop compassion and new understandings for one another. We thank you, God, for our family configuration and for every child of yours that you have placed in our networks. May we see the blessings in them. May we look for the good in them. May we treasure the good in them. And may we be open to find divine gifts within their hearts. Thank you, dear Lord of life, for this lesson in how to be Christ inspired and Christ led eternal spirits. May we continue to take the vitamins of hope, joy, and courage by learning to love without conditions. May we see in ourselves and in everyone the divine flame that shall forever shine and unite us all the more with you, dear God. Finally, we pray so that inspired by the lessons of today, we are more than willing to fulfill your loving will for us. May we feel your presence, be inspired by your presence, and be guided by your presence always. So be it. Thank you, dear sunshine, for
Thank
this beautiful
you.
gifts and seeds of hope that we share
Thank
together.
thank you, Carol.
Thank you, dear friends. May you feel the blessings of God embracing you. If we haven't spoken your name, feel embraced, loved, and cherished as a child of God. If you're listening to us on demand, You are a beautiful child of God as well. May
Yes.
you feel blessed by God's love always. Thank you, dear friends, and we'll see you next time.
Take care.
Many blessings.